Welcome. You're watching Vision Plus. Well, I know you've seen a lot of the ads in the paper about Father's Day coming up. It seems that the whole United States, at least all of the merchants, are happy this day came about. And there is a reason. It was June, we call it the June in, well, this for us this year, June 20th, 1993, Father's Day. But there was a man that raised his children after his wife had died, and so one of the daughters was so proud of the way that the dad had kept the family together, and had, when it wasn't a typical thing for dads to do. And so he did the cooking, he did the cleaning, he worked outside the home, and he changed diapers and kept the family together. And when the little girl grew up, she wanted to do something to honor her daddy. So she started Father's Day, and it was just like the feeling that I have about my own daddy, my earthly daddy, and the guest that you're going to see today, the way he feels about it. But it's also a command in the Bible, in Exodus 20 and 12, where it talks about, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. There are a lot of people who have had times when they could not honor, or parents they could not honor, because of the horrible things that have happened to them. Some of us may remember the recent story in Florida where the dad especially, but the parents killed their child, and it's just a horrible death. And we hear of all types of cruelty and incest and child abuse in all kinds of ways. However, for us that had a dad who was pretty good, you know, it's amazing. I loved my dad so much when I was a little girl, real tiny, because he would read to me, and as I became a little older, maybe 11, 12 years old, he took our Sunday school class around, and he taught us Paul's missionary journeys, and we would go from church to church to church. It was our Sunday night thing to go and recite by memory Paul's missionary journeys. He'd point them out on the board, and we would say them. I didn't know to appreciate him. In fact, when I got to be an older teenager, I just thought he wasn't the brightest thing in the world. Especially I forgot the fact that he'd helped me with my algebra, and he had studied on his own Greek and Hebrew so he could interpret some of the books in the Bible and words in the Bible. But I just thought he got pretty dumb. But you know what Mark Twain said? And I know exactly what he means. When I got about 21 or 22 years old, my dad became brilliant. He knew how to handle his finances, his children, his wife, his land. He had, even during the Depression when he lost his home without, well, actually it was his store, a paint and wallpaper store, without any insurance, then he was able, over those years, to pay off all of those people, still save the money to buy 100 acres, and we had a good childhood. And maybe some other things will come out, but the person that I have with me today is one that I've known quite a number of years, 35 to be exact. At least that's how long I've been married to him. Tony Libhart, my husband, welcome.
Hello.
I know that you had a rather unusual time with your dad. Why don't you tell me about what you first remember about your dad and something about your childhood?
Well, I think everybody has an unusual time with their dad or their mother or an uncle or somebody. And
either they love them or they hate them, I guess.
Yeah,
and
I think most everybody wants to love their dad and their mother.
Most people do, in fact, love their dad, even if they treat them bad. You know, they can
still go back,
beat them or whatever.
Right.
They still forgive them and love them.
Right, because they're still your dad.
What do you remember most, or earliest, about your dad?
I remember that he was stern, but yet I knew that he loved me. So no matter what I would do, and I think I was the fifth of 5 sons. and we were referred to as John Libhart's Little Indians.
Well, there are actually 6 of you, but one passed away.
One passed away in 1990, yes, or 89. And anyway, the thing that I remember most about him is that he was fun.
What do you mean he was fun? What did he do that was fun?
He liked to kid and clown around with us, and my dad always included whichever of the boys was with him at the time in the conversation. Didn't matter who he was talking to.
Now, he had a business that started in like 1919.
About 1919, and it's still in operation, and 2 of my older brothers run that operation. One is 72 years old, and one of them is 67 years old, and they're still going strong. Of course, they start work when they feel like it, and they go home when they feel like it, and they take as long for dinner time or supper that they feel like, and then they go back to work.
Yeah, this is a automobile repair.
Automobile repair,
but it hasn't
yes.
always been just repair. What happened during the wartime?
Well, he had, at the time, what's called direct dealerships for all the General Motors vehicles plus Ford. And
General Motors being Buick and Oldsmobile
Buick,
at that
Old,
time,
Chevrolet, and Cadillac, and then Ford also.
Which
all
was
at the
very
same
unusual,
time.
but he was the only dealer in the community in Pennsylvania at that area.
Yeah, and during the Depression, he went on through the Depression and had all the dealerships at that time. And then about the time the Second World War broke out and my 3 older brothers went to the service, then he gave up those dealerships and he just repaired cars.
And
that's at the time that I started working with him full time. I was 7 years old. But I still went on, finished high school, and then went on and finished college.
You worked after work, after you got out of school?
After I get out of school. I'd get home at about 3:30 in the afternoon.
Eat a big bowl of ice cream, your mom
Big bowl of
said.
ice cream, lots of cereal or whatever she had. And Mom cooked like a champion. She was a great cook. And I was a great eater. So anyway, during the war years is when I started to work on a full-time basis at the garage with my dad, and I got very close to my dad.
When you say, you know, like 3:30 till 8 or 10 or 11?
No, till about 12, sometimes 1 in the morning.
I can't imagine your mom allowing him to make you work like that or allow you to work like that.
Everybody who could work and was old enough had a job at a government installation. It's something to support the war. And he could not hire people, but he could train you very well. And that's what he did. He took me as a young boy, and I wanted to learn that business. And I learned the automotive business during those years.
What was it like being with your dad so many hours? You were the only one that was with him.
I was the only one during those.
Because the one that died, he had heart trouble.
He had heart
even
trouble.
Though he married and so forth.
And then my younger brother also had some physical problems, although I think he pretty well outgrew most of them, learned to adjust for it. And well, one thing I remember, and my dad used to kind of laugh at this, but at 7, 8, 9, and 10 years old, I would not stay in the garage myself if he went off somewhere. And if he would go downtown to buy some parts from a parts store, even though it only took him 20 minutes, we'd have to close the garage. I'd jump in his little pickup truck, and we'd both ride down, get the parts, get right on back, open the garage again, and we'd be back working. But, you know, he was willing to do it because he was glad to have somebody that would work with him. Now, he didn't have to do that until 3:30 in the afternoon. And during those years, the parts stores stayed open until 8 o'clock at night. And to me, it was fun. I was learning. I was doing something that I knew.
I understand you had a lot of ice cream sundaes and sodas. And
oh, yeah. Yeah, at night he'd close up at 12 o'clock, and we'd go to a little ice cream store. There's ice cream and a little store called Charlie's in Marietta, Pennsylvania, and they'd have a jukebox and some pinball machines. And at 12 o'clock, my dad got along with this guy real well. It's 12 o'clock midnight. And Charlie would bring out my cigar box of slugs, and I would play that pinball machine while he and my dad talked for about 20 minutes to 30 minutes. And then he'd get the slugs back out, and we'd go home.
All the time you had an ice cream soda or something.
Yeah. Oh, I'd get 2 or 3 ice cream sodas if I wanted them, or milkshakes. That's what and I think they all stayed with me, too.
But now, your dad, what were some of the things that you said? He was fun, yet he was stern. How could he? That balance is so difficult, because I know you, and I know you love him so much, loved him so much. But how was he stern? Give me an example of his discipline.
Well, he wouldn't let me get off on some tangent, or if I got angry with something, he would call me aside and he'd say, I know that I get angry and I show you a bad side of me because I get frustrated at things. He said, but things don't have a brain. They're not trying to hurt you. And you can become master of them if you will stop, take a few minutes and think about what's happening with a certain part of an automobile. And you always hear, like, well, the mechanics say a lot of bad words. They hit their fingers with hammers. They get a cut here or there, and they learn to be kind of nasty talkers. And they're probably very good people, but it kind of goes with the system that they can say, you know, kind of, you wouldn't want to listen to them talking about their business in church, so to speak. Well, he would tell me, get aside, stop, don't do anything but think, and figure out what it is you're going to do next to overcome this challenge. So you learn to look at a situation and pick a trail that you're going to work on and overcome your challenges. And then you start producing good work at that time. And that's something that he taught me, and to me, it was a very valuable lesson. Don't sit there and complain about it. Think, and then act. And then when you perform your act that you thought out, if it's going in the wrong direction, stop again. Don't get mad and frustrated. Just stop and use your brain. Be
angry and sin not. Okay to be angry, but
yeah, but then don't jump off on some tangent and just rant and rave. Use your brain. You have that too. You got a mouth that you can cuss with, but you have a brain you can think with. You'll gain if you use the brain.
I have never, in 35 years, I have probably heard you say 2 words that were, you don't say bad words. And so if you had all that training, how did you keep from carrying that over where you don't cuss?
Oh, I slip plenty of times, but I try to.
Not around me.
I don't do it around you, or no, I don't do it around the kids. I'm very careful about that.
That's right. Now, he was really strong in going on to church, and your mom did also. And
well, we worked 7 days a week during during the 40s, and but then after my 3 older brothers got back from the service, and one was in a prison camp in Germany for about a year, one was in Japan. Situation, Pearl Harbor in Japan.
Yeah, in Pearl Harbor, but lived over that and came back again.
And then one was in Italy, in the Air Force, setting up the planes for the bombing raids.
Boy, I'd love to hear how they feel about our president who never served.
They don't say much about the war. They're
upset with him a little bit about that, I guess.
Well, yeah, I have, since they're in Pennsylvania and I'm down here in Alabama, I don't have that much contact, you know, on an ongoing basis, but we will shortly because they're going to visit us. But back to my dad, I think I loved him just because he was the person he was. He was a good man. And during the war years, he did not attend church very much because, like I say, we were open 7 days a week. And he just wasn't in a position to do a lot of church attending. But after my brothers got back from the service, then he spent quite a bit of time at the church, I guess making up for the years that he didn't go.
That happens a lot of times. And I know that you were like a choir boy, not a choir boy, but what were you called?
Yes, I was a choir boy for a short period of time in an Episcopalian choir, even though I grew up as Lutheran. But you see, the Episcopalian preacher insisted that they pay these kids to sing in the choir.
Mercenary guy.
Yeah. And I did it because I wanted the spending money, and plus my best friend was an Episcopalian. He was in that, Jim Marley there. who is now president of AMP Corporation. So, and he and I were real close buddies. And but yes, a Lutheran preacher wanted to send me to seminary, and he came home one day and caught me as I was coming back from school.
Was that in high school or college?
I was in high school. I think I was in about the 10th or 11th grade. And he asked my mother, would she let him send me to seminary? Well, my mother was kind of independent too, and she said, I don't send any of my boys anywhere. They make up their own minds. You just go ask him. And the best time to ask him is right now. So he asked me, and I said, well, I really am thinking about going to school and learning more about electricity and mechanics, and I want to do that first. And then that's what I did.
At
And
Penn State.
yeah, and I liked that so well that I wanted to stay with it.
Mm-hmm. So you're just now preaching to an audience of one. That's me and our kids.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I get a little preaching there. But what were some of the other things that your dad and your family did that makes you think that you could honor your father, not because you loved him only, but because he also was a fun person and a stern disciplinarian?
After that war was over, because we worked hard during those war years, okay, and I think he made most of his income during that period of time. He wasn't afraid to work for a living, and when he saw that it was really reaping a good benefit, well, he pushed all that much harder. And then when the brothers came home, he went up to the northern part of the state up in the mountains and bought a piece of land, and then our family over a period of about 15 years built a cabin and made it bigger and bigger and bigger. And now my youngest brother owns that cabin.
That was given him when your mom died this year.
That's right.
But you got some really...
I did okay. Yes, I inherited the business property that my brothers are now operating in Pennsylvania. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And your other brothers, they had each one something choice that they would like to have.
Right. They each have some houses, some properties. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, why do you think that your dad was able to, even though he would lose his temper, he was able to still get the message across to you that it's not really wise to, in other words, don't always do as I do, but do as I say, and yet you knew he was serious about that. Yeah. How does a parent get that message across that, yeah, I'm human, I do some things wrong, but don't always follow exactly what we do? Sure, we know that this Bible talks about us being an example for our children, and I think that a lot of times we do a fair job of that, but there's a lot of times we haven't. So how was he able to get that message across to you?
In thinking back, that's a new question. I'm not prepared, but let me think through it. I can remember that when he would get angry, he wouldn't stay angry long. It was short and blown over, and that was it. And you knew that whatever he was angry at, all was forgiven about 15 or 20 minutes later. All you had to do with my dad was sit him down to a meal and have him a good meal ready, and he would lose his anger. And my mother knew that, so she became an excellent cook.
I know she was a James Beard trained gourmet cook.
Yeah, she could do the gourmet bit, and a lot of people would come in just to...
And he was real active, not just in his home, but also part of the city council and council work.
Right, he was always active in city government, and...
now my dad was different.
He was benevolent too. If he knew somebody was having some trouble, if it was finances or whatever it was, the rest of the family usually didn't find out about it even, but if he had extra money that he felt he could be free with, and he knew somebody was down on their luck, he would see that they were taken care of. And they would never have to pay him back.
Did a lot of that too. I've seen him buy bags of groceries to take over to families, and endless hours of going to pick people up and do things for them. He even drove, I guess either of those words be all right, people who didn't have a car or a way to go, my dad would actually drive them to the doctor or take them for groceries, and many times buy the groceries for them. And so I know I think we had unusual dads, but I didn't know to appreciate it until so many years later. And so many times I think that's the way it is, that we don't know how to appreciate it. Now we're passing the ideas along to our children, and our grandchildren are seeing these ideas. If you were going to share with a young father today some tips on how to be a better father, let's see if we can succinctly put these into some tips. Number one, spend some time with the children, right?
Right, and try to give them all the same attention. And if you give one specific attention or recognition for something, then don't exclude the rest of them the next day or the next hour or maybe each week. Highlight another one of those children so that they all feel they have their time, that they're special, and not that you're putting one above the other one, because that gets children to scrap when they're still at home, and then when they get out in the business world, if they ever have any dealings together, they're going to be scrapping and arguing then.
Scrapping is arguing and fighting.
Getting angry and doing things they shouldn't, and try to hurt one another or even hurt one another's feelings.
So listen to the children, give compliments in equal time. I even wrote some things down, and you're actually reading my notes, only I know you didn't ever see them. So actually we have the same. Taking the time, listen, compliment them, and be stern with them. Did he ever whip you? Do you remember him ever spanking you?
Oh, yes.
Oh, he did? Okay.
And I never deserved it. I deserved more than I ever got.
Oh, you guys deserve more. Yeah. I can remember, now my dad only whipped me a couple of times, you know, once with a kookaburra and got it all in my hair and really got my mother angry. But he didn't really ever spank. That was Mother's job, and she used a peach limb. We had a peach orchard, and she went and got her own peach limbs, and oh, that right across the bottom, that hurt. Oh, and I was always saying, I'll never do it again, I'll never do it again, oh, please stop. You know, I'm crying.
An hour later, you're doing it.
You probably. But what about the time you sent your son out, our son out for...
Oh, you remember that? Yeah, we sent Anthony out, and one day I told him I was really angry at him, but I thought, well, we got to let him participate in this. So he remembers, I said, Anthony, you go get me something to spank you with. That was a mistake, saying something. So he came back like this and had his hands behind his back, and he looked at me and said, Daddy, here's a big red feather is what he handed me with. And I tried to be stern at that time, and I burst out laughing. I don't think he learned a lesson. I learned a lesson at that time.
But you know, he probably remembered it.
Oh, yeah, he remembers. Yeah.
I think he's a very good daddy, because I've seen him for maybe over a year. He didn't have a job in between jobs when he was laid off one time or fired or whatever. But anyway, I've seen him spend many hours of washing his little girl's hair, combing and brushing, and I know he brushed that hair.
He's really good at it.
Well, it seemed like such a long time. So he spent time with his children, and some of their friends had recently gotten a divorce, and the kids were overly distraught about, what if my mother and daddy have to get a divorce? And I'll always remember that his son said to him, well, I guess if my mother and daddy got a divorce, I'd have to go with my dad because he needs me. And I thought, you know, that's a good feeling for children to have. And we hope nobody ever gets a divorce ever. And Tony and I came so close that we wrote this book, Born Again Marriage. If you'd like to have it, send a donation to Victory Network and you may have it. And it's about all the bad things about Tony. A couple good things too. Maybe one or two about me. No, he's a pretty good guy. I thank you for coming out here to be with me to honor our Father. As it says in Exodus 20:12, honor your father and mother so that your days will be long on this life. And I think this is a man that did honor his father
long on this earth.
Oh yeah, on this earth. Okay, in this life, on this earth. There you go. But a longer time in heaven because you'll be doing the right thing.
Right.
And we thank you for joining us. I'm Bonnie and Tony Libhart. Bless your heart for watching.